And just hit record. Hi, everybody, and welcome to our webinar. My name is Joy Banks, and I am the Executive Director of the Council of State Archivists. We are so glad that you all have joined us for this first in a series of 3 webinars on tools and techniques for streamlining the transfer of agency records. When I looked earlier this afternoon, we had over 100 people registered for today's event, and we are just delighted that you all are here today. This is a partnership with Preservica on this webinar series. Preservica is our longtime sponsor of our SERI program, and we hope that this collaborative series will be a practical and interactive exploration of the challenges and potential solutions for efficient and automated transfer of records. CoSA's mission is to provide leadership to strengthen and support state and territorial government archives leaders and staff in their work to preserve and provide access to government records. And for nearly 15 years, SERI has enabled us to take a particular interest in improving the management, preservation, and access to state and territorial government electronic records in our 56 member organizations. With swift advancements in technology and exponential growth in electronic records creation, government archives are really poised to lead the way in implementation of tools and techniques that continue efforts to document government, promote history, and secure rights. So let me be the first to thank our presenters, our webinar planners, and our generous sponsor, Preservica, who made all of this possible. I am delighted to turn your attention to our presenters for today and hope that you are enriched by this time together. Alex?
Yeah, thank you, Joy. Thank you for the introduction. Hello, everybody. My name is Alex Cadero. I'm a new member of the expanding team here at Preservica. But as Joy said, our relationship with CoSA has been enduring for many years. I wanted to also big shout out to Hannah at Colorado State Archives for being our speaker today on the topic of dealing with roadblocks, speed bumps, traffic jams, potholes, and any other journey-based technologies when it comes to record transfers, stakeholders, and operational processes. I'm looking forward to her presentation, so I won't keep you waiting too long. I only have a few points I would like to share with you, and I hope you'll find this presentation material useful. These are resources for you to use with your own organizations and in conversations with your stakeholders. So please do take pictures, make notes, and if you have any points of your own that you'd like to make, please share them with the group. We want to make this a discussion section at the end after Hannah does her talk. I'll get a discussion going with a couple questions. So let's get right into it. So our IT leaders today, as much as Preservica talks to archivists and record manager folks, we also engage a lot with IT leaders. That's also my background, coming from Hewlett-Packard Enterprises and data protection. Really, their objectives may differ from archives or record leaders on the surface, but it doesn't take much to scratch to find that the goals really align pretty nicely. This is especially helpful in today's world where our organizations are moving to Microsoft 365, and Microsoft themselves are telling us that 2 billion files are being added to Microsoft 365 environments every day. And every day, 2 million sites are being created, and that's a lot of content to manage. So when it comes to our friends in IT, optimizing storage costs, consolidating systems and storage, and reducing reliance on IT teams to access usable and trusted data are very, very much helpful and top of mind for them. So they come to us and they're saying the things that they want. They want to have a solution in place for Microsoft 365 so they can manage the rapid growth of content while also maintaining storage costs and not ballooning out of proportion when it comes to SharePoint. They're asking us to reduce the reliance on file shares, local storage, decommissioning old, outdated hardware, and unsupported legacy systems. In the case of SharePoint, use it more as an operational repository for only frequently accessed files and need to archive inactive permanent files to save space, reduce storage costs, and ensure the business users have access up-to-date records and relevant information while also preserving those archives. They want safely to keep records within long-term and permanent retention. And finally, we're hearing reduce IT resources and reduce the reliance of IT teams to retrieve archival data and reallocate those IT resources into value-added tasks like cybersecurity and things like we've heard from them. So if you're aiming in your works to work with IT leaders to get buy-in, to ask them where where these may rank in their highest priority and why, from there you can really align your agenda with their needs, and maybe those initiatives can become mutually beneficial. The next slide, please. So without the right tools in place, there are significant risks of data loss when it comes to preserving born digital and digital records over long term. We all know there are multiple threats affecting the usability, long-term content. If unaddressed, these threats can significantly impact the organization ability to access, trust, and use the information when it's needed. So a couple things I'm going to run through, right? Archival backlogs of archival information in aging formats will continue to grow in volume if not addressed. And there's a real risk of that data being lost. Storage obsolescence. The storage media on which information is held may become unreadable by current technology. Format loss. If an original software needed to read the file is not accessible, then the file is unreadable. Context loss. It's very common that pieces of information will be comprised of multiple different files and file types, and losing just one of those files due to obsolescence can really have a fundamental change of the information. Discoverability, searchability. I'm not sure many of us are using SharePoint today, but the search feature is very in its early stages. So being able to provide day-to-day operations and means of being able to find files that are important and making sure that they do exist. Deletion could be accidental or in a way to free up storage space. But if there are no backups in that SharePoint, then that content is lost, right? Bit level failure, the zeros and ones that make up all the data of all of our content. If anything is damaged by accident or on purpose, it is then unusable or untrustworthy. All right. Permission loss. If information may have been in place, but maybe invisible to the user, then it cannot be used. License loss, maintaining legacy licensing, right? So if the software is not available, then the license keys are not available, and then the software is therefore unusable, and the content within that software is unreadable. And constant change. All right, the information IT today, things are moving very quickly. So systems that create it, it may not. You may have been edited after a decision was made and unable to keep it. So again, a lot of this might not be news to a lot of you on the call. But it might not be at the top of the organization's mind and understanding where the problem may be. So talking to them about the impact of losing public records and long-term data can really, spoil their day. So moving on, next slide. This was something we created. This was a piece of content we wanted to give to you all today. It's a simple self-assessment for people to quickly complete, engage if this topic is actually a strategic priority. So really, in a nutshell, if you can say yes to any or all of the questions, it is likely your long-term content is at risk of data loss today. You might find these questions useful if you're having difficulty advocating for digital preservation, ensuring you have the right tools in place for managing long-term archive records. They're designed to open up conversation and build consensus. So once again, I wanted to thank Hannah McElroy from Digital Archivists at Colorado State Archives. I wanted to hand it over to her to tell her story and her journey with Preservica. Thank you.
Thanks, Alex, for that introduction, and thank you to CoSA and Preservica for having me. Like you said, I'm Hannah McElroy. I'm the digital archivist for the state of Colorado, and today I will be presenting how the Colorado State Archives use and how we use Preservica to tackle the transferring of legislative videos from stakeholders. As a little bit about my personal background and experience with databases and archives, prior to becoming the digital archivist and using Preservica in September of 2022, I had been working on contract for the archives doing an inventory project for 9 months. And before that, I had been working and interning in museums, utilizing multiple databases like Past Perfect, Argus, and Razor's Edge. I have a master's degree in museum studies from the University of Leicester and a bachelor's in anthropology and history from the University of Tennessee, which I wanted to make sure I mentioned Tennessee in case there are any Tennessee archivists on the call today. If I could go to the first slide, please, or the next slide. A little bit of background about the Colorado State Archives. CSA consists of 90,000 linear feet of archival material, which can be found at our 3 storage locations. Our main offices and storage location is located in downtown Denver in an unrenovated building from 1975 and consists of 4 floors. And we'll come back to the aging building being an issue in a few slides. We have 12 staff members, and there are 4 of us that work on the collections processing team, while the others work in more public-facing research roles. Like I said previously, I joined the team as the digital archivist in September of 2022. As the digital archivist, I am the main Preservica user, and I work with our processing team to create better workflows between stakeholders and Preservica. We've been Preservica customers since 2019, but until I was brought on the team, there hadn't been a digital archivist since March of 2020. Next slide, please. Like I said, we have been Preservica customers since 2019, but without that digital archivist, we had only really done test ingests until I came along. Coming into the position, there was a large backlog of digitized files on our servers and with stakeholders. To tackle the internal backlog sitting on our servers, I learned about the OPEX workflow, or Open Preservation Exchange, that Preservica offers, which allows a collection of files and folders with optional metadata to be easily transferred into Preservica using a third-party S3 bucket, which is cloud-based. And we chose CyberDuck as our third-party bucket since that is what we saw used in a different Preservica webinar a couple of years ago. But there are other options like Cloudberry based on your personal preference. Preservica helped to both set up the OPEX workflow in our system and created the bucket with an access key and secret key for us to dump our files into. OPEX and CyberDuck were game changers as it allowed me to quickly drag and drop large files and folders into a bucket that would automatically ingest into Preservica once uploaded. So basically a 300 gigabyte asset now only took 72 minutes to upload into CyberDuck, which was super fast. And a hurdle we had with this that we had to overcome to make CyberDuck happen was working with state IT to get it downloaded, since they don't usually like us employees downloading random apps from the internet. But after explaining how CyberDuck would increase our productivity and workflows, all I had to do was let IT remote into my computer and download the app for me. And in general, I've found that IT is willing to play ball if you're able to justify that need for your agency. And then during this time of exploring OPEX and CyberDuck to help with our backlog, 3 months into my position, the archive gods really decided to drive home the importance of digital preservation and making sure our digital files were kept in a stable environment by sending us a flood, a plague of rattlesnakes, and a sewage leak. The flood occurred in our main building and storage area due to frozen pipes on Christmas Eve and impacted 4,000 units or archive boxes, as you can see in these pictures. The rattlesnakes were at one of our offsite locations, making it dangerous for our employees to pull boxes for research requests. And then our third and final plague saw sewage raining from the ceiling only a few feet away from where my entire digital setup was located. So all these events happened back to back, and I like to include this little story in my presentation to highlight the fact that us archivists never know what's around the corner and why digital preservation is so important. Next slide, please. So when I started as digital archivist, the legislative video backlog was something that I knew existed. but was made out to be an almost frightening undertaking, especially in regard to how we were going to get it from point A, our stakeholder, to point B, us, the archives, to point C, Preservica. This video backlog spanned over a decade, from 2008 to 2022, and had been kept by the Open Media Foundation, which films and processes legislative videos for the state of Colorado House and Senate. While altogether the files only amounted to around 4 terabytes, the question of how we get all these files to us and into Preservica without them being corrupted was easily answered once we got a hang of OPEX and CyberDuck. I realized we can use CyberDuck as a sort of external contributor tool for stakeholders that need to get us their digital files in a quick, easy, and secure way. Lucky for us, our first contributor also happened to have a tech background, so when I first mentioned CyberDuck and how we used it, he was immediately game to try it out. I used the Preservica service desk to help set up an access key and secret key for our contributor on CyberDuck, which is different than the one I use for internal transfers. I then walked the contributor through how to set up CyberDuck in a quick meeting after they had downloaded it with the help from their IT department, which was separate from the State Department IT. And after one trial run, he felt confident enough to begin transferring the backlog MP4 files. Once he uploaded the files into CyberDuck, I was then able to see them in the bucket. We can be logged in at the same time, quality check them, and then manually begin the OPEX ingest workflow that was set up for this case. Now that we have this set up with our stakeholder with the legislative videos, they're able to upload files to the bucket as they have them available, preventing another decades-long backlog from happening. And then they email me to make me aware that they're in there, and then I'm able to go in and start the ingest process into Preservica. This process makes it so that while I quality check and hit the ingest into Preservica button, the files have a more direct route into Preservica compared to sending, say, a flash drive to our office through the mail that can take days. Being able to use OPEX and CyberDuck has made both our lives and the stakeholders' lives much easier, made the process of getting files to us much smoother and safer, and over what added up to a few days of work, we were able to conquer what was thought to be a daunting task, but turned out to be a relatively easy, quick win case for us. Next slide, please. So this is what the CyberDuck window looks like. And when you're uploading a file, that's the smaller window on the left. But it's super quick, super easy, drag and drop, has made my life so much easier. Next slide, please. So going forward, we have since used this process with a couple more agencies for both permanent transfers and our temporary securities copy program, which is allowing special district to store their still active files with us in our Preservica system for a fee. As I mentioned before, we got lucky that our first contributor had a tech background, meaning he knew how cloud-based buckets worked and needed very little guidance, but this is not always the case. For other contributors from state agencies, they often have less of a tech background and give me that deer in the headlights, blank stare look when I first mentioned CyberDuck. Most of the time, too, the stakeholders at these agencies are eager to transfer us their files to get them off their hands, so they are looking for the quickest and most efficient way to do so. And I have found that sending a how-to guide upfront about the complete process of using CyberDuck from setup to ingest that includes screenshots of the process, quells any skepticism from potential contributors, and piques their interest when they realize that once the initial setup is complete, it takes very little time to send us files this way. One of our other contributors from the state also had to work with IT to get CyberDuck downloaded, but with my use of it as precedent, it didn't turn out to be that big of a issue or take that much time. I have learned that if you explain the whole process and how it will benefit the process, stakeholders will be willing to buy into this idea, and I have yet to have someone say no to using CyberDuck. I am also looking forward to using the external contributor link from Preservica for smaller transfer cases. which only requires me to send the link straight from Preservica to a contributor. They then upload their files and folders up to 50 gigabytes and submit them into our system pending my approval. So that would actually cut out needing to use CyberDuck. And so now between stakeholder backlog, server backlog, security copies, and ongoing file digitization, I have ingested 100 terabytes into our system over the past 2.5 years, thanks to the OPEX workflow and CyberDuck. You can go to the next slide, please. And I'll now throw it back over to Alex to get the discussion going and answer any questions y'all may have.
Yeah, thank you, Hannah, again for that. I'll get us started off with just a quick, easy question for you. And then anybody else who wants to throw in some other questions, please feel free. So what lessons did you learn along the way, and what can you really share with our audience today?
Yeah, so definitely learned that as long as you adequately explain what you're thinking for how to transfer files, most contributors will just go along with what you think is best or what you think is the quickest way. And what was the second part of that?
Oh, just something you would want to share from your experience with the audience today.
Definitely before I found OPEX, I was using the SIP creator, which totally good way to get files in, but it was a little slower than I like. But I think there's always a better way if you're finding the process to be slow. There's going to end up being a better way to go about doing something.
Excellent. And then kind of dovetail off that, what would you have done differently through this experience?
Oh man, you said these are easy questions.
Pretty good.
What would I have done differently? Probably for the first contributor, I would have sent them a how-to guide up front, but this was also my first rodeo. So he was really our guinea pig for that one. So it probably would have helped a little to send a how-to guide, but we worked through it together.
Very good. Thank you. Did we get any other questions from the chat? Say more about, see, Rona, not sure. Say, ask a question about having temporary records in Preservica that may have been pertaining to the external transfer of records. So what Preservica allows you to do is send an external submission with your user rights. So basically, Hannah has the ability to take all this content in and then control if it actually gets added to your collection. So Hannah, if that kind of answer the question, anything you want to add to that?
The temporary records question?
Yes.
I think, is that referring to my mention of security copies and keeping those temporary, or? Okay, so we have a security copies program where we, for a fee, store special districts and other agencies active files. And so by temporary record, we mean that it could have a retention schedule. And so they would tell us the retention schedule comes up, which you can set in Preservica. And then we would, if we're getting rid of them, we would have a deletion workflow, or we would export them, the whole package, give it back to them, and then delete their files. I hope that answers the question.
Mm-hmm. And then I guess any advice if IT is unwilling to download CyberDuck?
I mean, going to your supervisor or their supervisor to appeal and plead your case for it. I'd say I always tag my supervisor on any IT ticket, knowing that they may have questions. Our IT is pretty good about it, but I would say making your case for it. If you wanted to use this presentation to download CyberDuck or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Preservica, I mentioned at the top, trying to reduce the need of going to IT for these archive reasons. A lot of times, Hannah, as the archivist, you have control over who sees what content, right? So being able to control, the access of that content can be vital without having to get IT involved, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, and it's also great having Preservica. I feel like I talk to and get help from you guys more often than I ever need to get
Yep.
help from state IT.
Always willing to help. Yes.
Yes.
Patricia, very good question. Yes, we do have a plugin now. It is just over a year that we've been around. It's called Preserver 365. We do have workflows built right into SharePoint. If you're interested in learning more, we can certainly set up some time.
Yeah, I think that that's a good point too, Patricia, about making a case that archives are receiving current born digital. This isn't just old stuff, that an archive and records management program is about preservation of all of the mandated records.
Absolutely. And it really just with Preservica all comes down to labels, right? And a lot, what's great about Microsoft is within their suite of resources, they have kind of retention management, records management built in to SharePoint that then Preservica can work through and provide workflows for you on top of that to kind of set up a very similar workflow that you have within Preservica, but it ties right into things like Microsoft Purview and Power Automate. Great. Any other questions out there?
I see Heather's hand, so
I got
we'll
I got
unmute
one more
her.
question for Hannah here. Do you have regular contributors or born digital records to the archive?
So I do have it set up for regular contributors to, like, the bucket is set up and they're able to send me files when they have them. We don't have any sort of born digital workflow like Preservica 365 at the moment. So we use Google Suite here at Colorado. So there's no way to like directly ingest emails or anything like that. But emails are the next thing we will be tackling eventually. But
So I see Patricia's question around IT controls, that aspect of SharePoint. Yeah, that would be talking to them about the cost of SharePoint. The cloud of SharePoint is very a lot more expensive than where Preservica stores that data and that content, which would be in blob storage within Azure. Reduces the cost. That goes back to IT. They're always trying to save money on storage. If you have a discussion around that, it should definitely perk their ears up and have a discussion around gaining access, because with Preservica on the back end, that content can always be thumbnailed back. It's never leaving SharePoint. You never feel that IT is losing anything. It's just going to be at a lower tier storage, but still searchable within SharePoint.
for this next question from Heather, so yes, you would be able to do that with CyberDuck and Preservica, assuming you have a similar setup to what we have. And it is from our internal servers. So basically all you have to do is drag files from your server into CyberDuck, which then would go into Preservica. But I would recommend doing it in chunks and not 150 terabytes at once, because I have caused it to stall out before. So you can do about 800 gigabyte transfer usually works really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, good to know. Yeah, I think our drag and drop is like you mentioned 50 gigabytes.
Yeah.
I think, yeah, taking
Yes.
chop it up a little bit.
Yes. But 50 gigabytes is still better than a few months ago when it was 5. So
Exactly.
progress,
Yeah.
yes. But yeah, I've definitely stalled it out before trying to do more than 800 gigs. So
Yeah, network bandwidth would be a concern. Another method we have is not just drag and drop with Preservica, but a kind of a API driven, if this folder is full of content by Friday at X time,
Mhm.
perform an ingest. So that there's different methods, and we can certainly, Heather, we could certainly set up some time and talk about that. It's not just drag and drop. There's a lot of different methods that we can use. Yeah, excellent. Excellent. Joy, should I hand it back to you?
Sure. If there's no other questions, we'll chat for a little bit here just in case there are any more. But just a reminder that this is just the first in our three-part series with Preservica. So the next webinar will be on June 26th and is about practical tools and technologies for transfers. If you would be interested in participating as one of our panelists on that and have some tips and tricks from your own practices, you don't have to be a Preservica user. We can talk about other pathways to this work as well. Just reach out to Becky or me, and we can kind of connect you with the planning process on that. And then our third webinar will be on looking to the future and the impact of AI and transferring teams in Outlook. And we'll be having that on August 28th. All of those webinars are on our website. If you would be interested in going ahead and registering for those while you're thinking about them, we would encourage you to do that. And next slide. So Preservica has provided this download that we'll make sure is available on a recent white paper that they did, Agency to Archives Records Transfers. So that relates to this. I also posted earlier some of our backer resources that we've published recently, which in many cases apply to some of this work. And next. So just thank you all for coming. We're so glad that you were a part of this presentation and discussion. Please feel free to follow up with the CoSA team, with Preservica team. Hannah's email was on there as well if you have questions for her. And we hope that you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, Joy. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you,
Appreciate the
guys.
questions, everybody.